guys, this is Stephanie with JesusWired, here with Egypt Speaks.
Hi.
You might remember she was with us last year, Kingdom Come. So since then you've released a book and a new CD.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind the CD, Heroes and Villains?
Sure. So Heroes and Villains is actually a concept album. I've actually wanted to do one ever since I heard Levi the Poet. His correspondence was really a big influence on it. It's all stemmed from trying to talk to this little kid that I know about what the difference is between the hero and the villain in his comic books. And I remember sitting down and trying to explain, okay, well, the hero's the one that usually does all of the good things and the right things. And the villain's the one that, for some reason, just turned bad. And his next immediate question was, well, why is he evil? Like, what's the difference between good and evil? So what Heroes and Villains tries to encompass is, even though the origin of an individual is the same, what ends up happening and what choices have to take place for an individual to become either the hero of their story or the villain of somebody else's.
That's cool. That's neat that you do like a whole concept album. It's a neat idea.
I loved it.
So what message do you hope that people will get from the album?
Oh, wow. So I guess there are three main messages that I'm really kind of hoping that people understand. The first is that the hero and the villain end up actually being the same person. It's not a huge spoiler. It was actually it's actually the inspiration behind the album art itself. One thing that I do want readers, listeners, or viewers in this case to take away from it is that, one, you have the power to decide whether or not you are the hero or the villain in your story. I believe in a God that's a God of choice. He will never make you do anything that you don't want to do. And meanwhile, while there are right things and there are wrong things, you are free to choose between the two. And those choices, in many cases, will either make you a hero or a villain. The second thing that I really hope that people take away from it is that throughout the entire story, there's reference to an author, and how this is the way that the author would like it to go, but because of something that the character has done, it's not going the way that's been planned or the way that's been written. And knowing that, one, there's an author to your story, and third, and finally, you always have the power to change sides. Our villain in this fiction always will have the opportunity to change his ways and what he's thinking and why he's thinking it, because in the end, the only thing that separates a hero and a villain are their intentions and the outcomes.
Yeah, wow, that's cool. So there's a lot of background tracks on the album. Did you write and perform all those yourself?
I did. That took forever. So one of the things that I really enjoy doing, I love music. I love playing it. I like playing just different instruments. So I got together with a couple of friends of mine and we decided, it'd be really cool if this music was really cinematic and brought you into the action. So we started watching all of these Marvel and DC movies. We made it a point to go to Iron Man and Captain America: Civil War. And we wanted to create something, an idea, that would be able to bring the listener into a world where, honestly, spandex tells what side that you're on. And the only way to do that was through music. I can rhyme as much as I'd like, but I cannot make you be somewhere that you don't want to. You have to use your imagination. And music at that point, we would just like to be able to symbolize that. So I wrote everything. There were a bunch of people involved in telling me what sounded good and what needed work. But yes, I did write it.
Yeah, I definitely think they added something to the track, really brought you into the emotion of whatever particular poem. So that was a really nice set. I like those. And you also have a book that recently came out called Stories. So what inspired you to write a book?
Okay, so we go back a little further.
Sure.
Cool. So everything that I do is revolved around a story. Usually it's the story of a person. A lot of them are my own personal testimony. But the more and more I got to share these poems with people, the more I started hearing stories that were different than my own. And when you walk into, say, a room full of teenagers, which is usually who I love talking to, it's really hard to connect with them unless you have a connecting point. And a lot of what I focus on is suicide prevention, self-worth, the fact that you're loved, you are always going to be worth it. And it's very hard because that covers such a wide variety of reasons, from abuse and assault to just depression and anxiety. And there are things that, in some cases, thank God, I'll never have to go through, never have to experience. But for those people who have, how do I make a connection point for you to know I'm a safe person to talk to if you need to confide in someone? And two, that the love that I'm talking about is for you as well. So I wanted to create kind of poems that went with that. The book came after we had an amazing, I guess, past 2 years. 2014 and 2015 were really cool years for just the poetry in general. And I started to meet a lot of really cool people. And a lot of the times people would ask, what was the inspiration behind this poem? What was the inspiration behind that lyric or this rhyme or that pun? And truly, the inspiration for any poem that I've ever tried to do or have done or performed or will write in the future are the people whose stories I'm trying to tell. So all that Stories is it's a collection of all of the poems that were on the 2014-2015 set list. And it's these stories where I went back and I interviewed the people who inspired that poem. So what ended up happening, which was kind of cool, and I didn't realize it, but after the poem is shared and in their story, I share a little anecdote about the lesson that I learned from the poem. And through that poetry, I was then learning things that the past mistakes of others, especially the ones whose stories those were trying to teach people. And that I learned that every story does indeed have power, because they've definitely changed the way that I look at people, at life in general. And hopefully, for whoever ends up reading it, will change that view as well.
Yeah. So have you gotten much feedback from the book? Have you heard any like inspiring stories or like how it's impacted anybody?
I have. The book's only been out since, I think, the second week of January. And so we've taken it, the first tour that it went on was Fan the Flame tour. So it was dropped off in places like Newark and Asheboro, North Carolina. We went to Rocketown in Nashville. And it was a response that I never really considered. I mean, something that you have to know about me is I never thought that I would be able to do poetry outside of my bedroom. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that, you know, I'm sitting here with you, or the fact that we're talking about a book that I wrote or an album that's out that for some reason people want to listen to, it's completely foreign. So a lot of what the feedback has been is that someone has identified with a particular story. Mm-hmm. They can see themselves in it, but moreover, at the end, when the story shows the light in Christ, they can see that too. And through that, their faith is either strengthened, it's restored, or in many cases, it's found in places that were once deemed too dark to find any hope or light in.
Mm-hmm. So did you really enjoy the writing process? Do you think you'll write any more books?
You know, we're actually in the middle of writing a second one, which hopefully I'd like to finish sometime soon. Yeah. The writing process for this book was really strange. I remember sitting at Kingdom Come Festival last time I saw you, and another woman, Miss Amy, and I were sitting down, and she said, you know, you should really try writing a book. It would be really cool if you had poetry all kind of in one spot so that people who maybe can't catch what you're saying or miss a lyric and want to go back can go and read it. And I jokingly said, okay, you should too. And then the next year we came back and she's written a novel and story is out. Yeah. The writing process took, the writing of the book only took about a week and a half. The editing took closer to 3. There's a reason that everything that I read is spoken out loud rather than written down. I'm queen of typos. And I remember Valeska Parks, who was my editor, was going crazy. She's trying to find like all of the wrong usages of words, and you don't put the comma there, there shouldn't be a Q in the middle of the word there. There were issues. And so the writing process for me was a lot of fun. I would sit down in front of my computer and I would stay up for hours just writing what was on my heart and stuff that I really wish I had the time to tell people. Like the thing I think is 138 pages. And if someone sat there and listened to me recite 138 pages of poetry, they might need a new day job. And so I really wanted a platform kind of to share that with. So the writing process was definitely different. It should, in my mind, I was budgeting like 3 months to write the thing, and it took a little less than 3 weeks. So in many cases, I'm kind of hoping that the next book goes a little slower just so I can enjoy that journey a little more and flesh things out. But at the same time, if I do that, I know that it's going to be a whole lot longer than 138 pages. Yeah.
So where do you get the inspiration for what you write? Do you just things that come into your mind, or do you have like a certain writing process?
You know, that's changed a lot for me. Heroes and villains and stories, from a writing standpoint, are 2 completely different things. Heroes and Villains, I set out to create a fictional world with fictional characters and all of these abilities, but I wanted it to be real enough to be able to draw someone in. With stories, I was literally putting the testimonies of other people together with words that may rhyme sometimes, and meshed those and called it a poem, added the backing track. With the book, however, and with one of the new things that we're coming out with, I'm finding that the writing process is changing. It's not so much writing anymore. It's so much more fun just to be able to kind of speak what's on your mind and what's on your heart, and definitely what God is saying to you, which is the most important thing. And being able to translate that in a way that is relatable to people who are listening to it, to people who will see it, who will maybe read it in a book, who knows. So usually it starts with an idea. The poem How Are You, for example. I remember being asked by a band member how I was doing, and I knew that I was expected to say, hey, you know, I'm great, life is good, and it wasn't. Nothing was going the way that I wanted it to, but I felt as though I couldn't say it. And so I wanted to write a poem about, well, what can I say when these words aren't enough? But yeah, that's the writing process. Then you've got random ones like a new one called Memories, which I think I just did today, that change every time that I do it, because it's not an actual poem. It's more of a prayer. And in many ways, the ones that are like prayers and come out like that, and just the essence of Memories is about wanting to be that little kid again when you were little in your faith, and just wanting to dance with God in your bedroom in your socks on your hardwood floor so your mom can't hear you. But then having to grow up and feeling as though you've matured, but you're in a valley of dry bones when it comes to your faith. Like, for me, that is a daily prayer. I want to remain like, the Bible says, have faith like a child. The least of these will lead us. And in many cases, leaving that wide-eyed wonder behind ends up damaging our faith in a lot of ways. So I like to think that a lot of the poems like Confessions, The War Inside, Memories are prayers, and they're daily anthems that I try to live by. And then some of them are just really wacky stories, like falling off of my bunk bed because someone gave me a Superman cape, and I decided it would be a great time to learn how to fly. Yeah.
So how do you remember all of those? Like the ones that are actual like written poems, like when you perform?
Okay, so I'm gonna let you in on a secret. You don't. There comes a point, I remember being like really little and memorizing line after line after line after line of poetry and wanting to get it word for word perfect, but I will never forget trying to recite it at a concert, and you miss a word, and all of a sudden your whole brain implodes because that word's not there, and oh no, what do? I just tried to rhyme something with orange and it's not going to work. I don't really memorize anything anymore. Heroes and Villains, like I said, was a completely different style in writing. It was a completely different process. So because Heroes and Villains is really more of a story and it's really more of a prayer on my end, I try to, one, be real where I am. There's no use in me trying to deceive you into thinking that everything's okay if it's not. And so there are days when like the set will be super, super dark, and there are days when it's not. But it's most important to try to be honest in those cases. So no, I do not memorize things. I probably should, but I can't.
Yeah. Well, it's impressive that you like what you do.
Thank you.
Even if it's not memorized and it's just like kind of off the top of your head. So, very impressive. Do you ever get nervous before you perform?
Absolutely, but there's also a secret to that. So you see how you're wearing those wonderful glasses? I usually wear glasses. I don't have contacts. What I discovered though was that to put your glasses on, generally you need to be able to see them in the first place. And I have broken so many pairs of glasses just stepping on them that I've just completely left putting them on as like the before stage thing. So if I'm speaking, I can't really tell that you're there. I can hear you. I can see maybe shapes or something moving, and if someone drops something, I'll hear that. But it's really more for me not to get nervous, but also to know that I'm not here to try to impress anybody. It's not something like poetry, especially for me, because it is a prayer. I am performing to God to show my love for Him, and in that, trying to reflect the love that He has for me to everyone else. And if I'm looking at you and you're like, you know, on your cell phone or checking Facebook or talking to a friend and I get distracted, like it's really easy, I think for performers in general, to get caught up in, oh, we didn't do a good job because, you know, that one kid was off walking around, we couldn't keep the crowd. If you were performing, especially poetry, spoken word, and I'm pretty sure you can ask any spoken word artist this. It's an act of worship, and that is usually, should only ever be for God. And so sometimes it's nice, like, having glasses and just being able to take them off and being in front of an audience of one.
Yeah, well, I definitely think you do a very good job in like conveying the message and like helping spread God's light and love. So it's very cool. So thank you again for taking the time. Can you remind people where they can find your albums and your book?
Absolutely. So I actually picked this up from a guy named Chris Store. He goes on this long story about how art has value, and because sometimes it gets devalued, like Taylor Swift pulled her stuff off of Spotify, I believe that you have value and you have worth, and even if you don't, say, make it out to a show or can't buy an album, I still want you to be able to have it. So everything is available for free. If you go to noisetrade.com and you put in Egypt Speaks, you will find literally everything that I have ever done, both the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's easy, it's free, download it, you can share it with a friend, or you can pick it up at a merch table at the show.
All right, cool. Well, thank you again very much.
Thank you.
And make sure you get plugged into JesusWired.com.